everyone. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the Albany Unified School District Board of Education regular meeting. Today is February the 11th, and we're calling to order at 7:19 p.m. Do we need to do another roll call, Ms. Shen?
Yes, thank you. Student Trustee Shepard.
Here.
Student Trustee Dedar is absent tonight. Trustee Inglis.
Here.
Trustee Khan.
Here.
Trustee Davidson. Here. Vice President Mahoney.
Here.
President Hopwood.
Here.
Superintendent Stone.
Here.
Thanks.
Great. Okay, so we are going to begin with the reading of the AUSD mission and vision statement and the meeting norms with Student Trustee Shepard.
The mission of Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment addressing the individual needs of each student. Meeting norms. Maintain a focus on what is best for our students. Ensure a safe environment for all views to be expressed, treating each other, staff, and public respectfully. Endeavor to find common solutions to issues through collaboration without sacrificing one's beliefs in what is best for students. Make a commitment to effective deliberation, each one listening with an open mind while others are allowed to express their own points of view, even if one disagrees.
Thank you so much. And now the Pledge of Allegiance for those who'd like to take part. Vice President Mahoney will lead that. Thank you so much. Now we are moving on to item 4, report of action taken in closed session, and the board took no action in closed session. And now the approval of the agenda is the next item. Anybody ready to move to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Agenda passes. And now we are moving on to item 6, which is recognition. The board recognizes and promotes awareness months, appreciation weeks, and national days with proclamations and resolutions that encourage the district to observe these occasions with appropriate events and instructional activities. I'm going to hand over now to Vice President Mahoney for this proclamation for March 2025.
I'm reading the whole thing, right? I'm reading the whole thing, right? All right, I'm ready. I'm all good. I can read. Proclamation number 2024-25-05, recognizing March 2025 as Women's History Month. Whereas women of every race, class, and ethnic background have risen to the challenges of our time, and their skills and knowledge, their personal growth, resolve, and resilience, their grace and humility, and their spirit of selflessness and service, filling gaps and doing whatever needs to be done, both inside and outside of our homes and families, to ensure those around them have what they need to thrive. And whereas Albany Unified School District has a staff composed overwhelmingly of women, and women constitute the majority of district volunteers. And whereas we recognize the key role that administrators, teachers, and staff play in our students' lives on a daily basis, and whereas our principals, classroom teachers, paraeducators, counselors, librarians, district office staff, school office personnel, mental health professionals, food service staff, campus supervisors, nurses, and health assistants, facilities and custodial staff, and so many others in our district have continually risen to meet the ongoing challenges faced by our students and their families following the COVID-19 pandemic, working tirelessly to keep our students safe and supported physically, socially, and emotionally. And whereas the work of women in and out of the home is still undervalued by our society, as women continue to be paid less than men for the same work, and to hit up against glass ceilings and outdated notions of what it means to be qualified or successful as they attempt to advance in their chosen industries and pursuits. And whereas women of all ages throughout history have continued a long legacy of collaborating and mobilizing for equity and justice in their schools and communities, so we are all better off, more protected and advocated for, and thanks to their unceasing efforts. And whereas the 2025 National Women's History theme designed by the National Women's History Alliance is moving forward together, women educating and inspiring generations, to celebrate the collective strength and influence of women who have dedicated their lives to education, mentorship, and leadership. Therefore, be it resolved that Albany Unified School District Board of Education proclaims the month of March 2025 as Women's History Month and encourages all district administrators, teachers, and staff to observe this occasion with appropriate instructional activity. And be it further resolved that we dedicate this month to all the women who work and volunteer in the district, and we take this opportunity to celebrate and express our gratitude to all of you.
Thank you so much. And now, moving on very aptly to recognition of Vonnie Davidson, former board president. Now, Vonnie wasn't able to attend the meeting in December where we would have honored her, and so we wanted to just show our appreciation. I appreciate everyone on the board. So many of us juggle multiple things, children, jobs, businesses in some cases, and Vonnie joined the board at a time in 2020, right in the pandemic, so had a wonderful couple of years as former trustee Boyd, and an amazing job for those first 2 years. And then when Trustee Khan and I joined the board in November 22, and she assumed the role of president, she really did just an amazing job. Makes it look effortless. It's not as easy as it looks, I'm realizing now that I'm sitting up here. And we so appreciate everything that you did to keep us on track, and particularly in the last year, since March of last year. I think what people who watch don't appreciate is the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes and the grace with which Vonnie led us through a really difficult time. I can't overstate that. So just wanted to say thank you publicly. And I have flowers for you. It's a small token, and there is a plaque coming, which was going to be here, but it's a bit delayed.
Well, I really appreciate all of the board members and the district staff that were a part of making that all look so easy. It was not, and there were many conversations and many meetings and many challenging decisions that we had to sort of guide through, and it is a lot to take on, and I really appreciate other people stepping up now as I am turning my focus to some other areas of my life that need that focus back. And I'm really just appreciative of getting to work with all of you and keeping Albany going in such a great direction as it's kind of turned into now. It always was, but it's different now. Okay, thank you.
So we're going to move on now to student board member reports.
At Albany High School on Thursday, February 13th from 6 to 8 p.m. in the AHS Little Theater is this year's Black History Month celebration. Students from all grade levels will be performing. Spring sports, baseball, boys golf, softball, swimming, boys tennis, track and field, and boys volleyball have just started. Tryouts are being held throughout this week. This week, leadership is hosting February Frenzy. All week there's dress-up spirit days like Monochrome Day and Ski Week for Spring Break Day. Also, there is a staff for students table tennis competition during lunch throughout the week. On Friday, Valentine's Day, the Albany Vocal Soul is coming to classrooms to perform and hand out Valentine's grams. Students and staff were able to purchase grams for the past couple of weeks where they picked out a song that Vocal Soul would perform for their person, as well as getting them candy and a card. Today, Albany High students organized a walkout in protest of the new immigration reforms. We walked to the top of Solano, back down Solano to San Pablo, to the El Cerrito Plaza, up to Harding Elementary, then down Key Route, back to the front of the school. Student turnout and community support was amazing. San Francisco Chronicles came and took pictures, as well as Albany High's journalism. At Albany Middle School, they have Unity Week from on Monday, March 3rd through Friday, March 8th. Thursday, March 6th, seventh graders have an authors assembly. There will be a TICO assembly on Friday, March 7th. At Marin, Thursday, February 13th, at the Black History Month celebration, the Marin 4th and 5th grade choir will be performing. All students and offices will be closed from February 14th through February 21st, 2025. For midwinter break, Albany Children's Center's preschool will be closed on Monday, the 17th, but will be open for the rest of the week. And that concludes our report.
Thank you so much. Now we're moving on to item 8, which is public comment for matters not on the agenda. And if you're here in person, please approach the podium. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you guys. So I'm here to speak about the Chromebook refresh. And I'm not here to oppose the Chromebook refresh because I think it's better to have. Is that? Oh.
So, yeah, I'm not sure that it's in that vein. It's about the actual what's on consent. We can leave it until consent, but I think it's more of a general technology piece. I don't know if you
Yeah,
would
I
agree.
think it's more of a general technology piece.
Not
Yeah.
specifically, not about the refresh.
Well, I mean, you just said I'm speaking about the Chromebook refresh. So is it on that topic?
I think you can think of it as a broader point. I think it'll be,
Okay.
So I think, look, I mean, it's the one-to-one Chromebook policy. I remember when we first adopted that policy. I remember moving towards it in the late 20-teens, and everybody was doing it. And then the pandemic hit, and we had to do it because it was virtual school, so we had to do it. And I didn't think anything of that at the time. 5 years later, it's different to me. My classroom is different. The students' relationship to technology is different, and my relationship to technology is different than it was in 2020. And I think that we need to look carefully at this. I think, there's a sort of momentum towards refresh forever. So I'll leave the refresh part out of it. But it's expensive maintaining these things. It's expensive. And, for a number of my students, if I'm, we're doing notes in class, about half my students are on task at any given time. About half are off task. And I've had more students request paperwork in the last couple of years. That's my continuation students, my McGregor students, as well as my Albany High AP kids. They've asked for paper packets for homework so they can annotate and not get distracted. I think once we're in the position of spending significant amounts of money to provide tools to everyone in the district, I think that there's an implicit message that's sent about the use of technology and that it's kind of an expectation. And if it's just the year 2025 and that's where we're at and we need to provide tools to everyone because it's 2025, I think that's okay. But I think we need to acknowledge the trade-offs of those decisions when we do them, because I think it sets a norm, and then everyone follows it. And as far as I can see from the data and the academic research, it's very much not all in the direction of we should be doing it. So, to be continued, I hope.
Thanks for your comment. Anybody else with public comment here in person? And I'm not seeing any more, and I'm seeing none virtually either. So we will now move on to review and action. And our first item is 9A. I'm going to pass it over to Director Brill.
I'm going to introduce an item, but we have other people who are going to be joining me up here who are welcome to join now or let them do their part as you prefer. Okay. Great. Good evening, President Hopwood, Vice President Mahoney, Board Trustees, Superintendent Stone, and our Albany Unified School District community. I'm Del Brill. I'm Executive Director of Student Services. And I have the pleasure of introducing a very important and from the heart item that we have tonight. Dr. Frank Wells was our former superintendent. He was a phenomenal human being. He made people, parents, staff, and students feel really, truly seen and really, truly cared about. And those of you who had the pleasure of knowing him, which I think most people in this room did, know exactly what I'm talking about. He modeled for us what it means to show up for others and for what you believe in, and still make space to truly enjoy life and pass that joy on to others. And I think, again, those are things that we all felt touched by his presence. So we're here tonight to celebrate his memory and his legacy. A small committee of us have been meeting to think about what's one way within Albany Unified, besides all of the ways that he lives on in each of us, what is one way to physically recognize his contributions to our school district. And our committee has drafted a resolution and is renaming and dedicating the Albany High School Library in his honor, the Dr. Frank Wells Library. I'm not going to get into why we chose that because I think that'll become evident as we share the resolution. And there will be a time that we have that dedication and ceremony and a plaque. We want to make sure there's something up there so that 10 years from now, students who maybe didn't have the pleasure of having that contact with him can read about and know him, and his legacy can live on in that way. We're working also with the family on a good date for that. So that will be publicized. I'm sure Kim Trutain will help us get that information out broadly and widely. But right now, I'd like to invite up, first of all, anybody from the committee who just wants to be, who would like to be up here and stand during the resolution, but in particular, Melissa Boyd, who's going to be reading that resolution for us. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. In the face of what still feels like an unbelievable tragedy, it has been a great honor to be able to convene our committee of people who knew and loved Dr. Wells to figure out one, as Executive Director Brill said, one way that we can acknowledge him and celebrate him and honor his memory. Resolution number 2024-25-13, naming the Albany High School Library the Dr. Frank Wells Library. Whereas the Albany Unified School District and the educational community throughout Alameda County and the state of California lost an esteemed and dedicated leader, colleague, and dear friend on March 11th, 2024, with the death of Dr. Frank Wells. Whereas Frank Wells was born on March 14th, 1964 in San Francisco to Marilyn Williams and James Whitman. He grew up in the Potrero and Hunters Point neighborhoods of San Francisco and was the second oldest of 5 siblings. Whereas at the tender age of 7, he began working, selling newspapers in San Francisco. His steadfast work ethic became a cornerstone of his character, leading him to join the United States Army upon graduating high school. The experience of serving in the U.S. Armed Forces taught him how to stay focused under pressure, and Dr. Wells carried these skills with him throughout his life. Dr. Wells received an honorable discharge in 1984. Whereas in 1991, Dr. Wells was the first Black man to graduate from Santa Clara University's teaching credential program. Dr. Wells subsequently returned to school in 1997 to earn his master's degree in educational leadership from California State University, Hayward, now East Bay, and later earned his doctoral degree in educational leadership from Nova Southeastern University in 2001. Whereas during a career spanning over 30 years in public education, Dr. Wells served as a teacher, principal, director, assistant superintendent, and an elected school board member. Whereas Dr. Wells joined the AUSD community as superintendent in July 2019, bringing with him his vision of always prioritizing what's best for kids, as he would say, and helping to heal a community, unify families, and restore our students' confidence in their schools as we attempted to move forward from a challenging time. He served in this role until his passing in 2024. Whereas during his tenure in AUSD, among many other accomplishments, Dr. Wells led the district through the reconstruction of 2 elementary schools, resulting in beautifully updated places of learning while staying under the allocated budgets, and advocated for and oversaw the renovations at Cougar Field, providing a much-needed overhaul so that our students, their families, and all members of our community can continue to safely enjoy that space for decades to come. Whereas Dr. Wells was the recipient of many awards and recognitions, such as the Governor's Top Academic Achievement Award and the California State Superintendent of Schools Model School Award for improving test scores, eliminating achievement gaps, increasing school graduation rates. He was also the recipient of the San Francisco Bay Area's Teacher of the Year Award, as well as the Administrator of the Year Award by the Association of California School Administrators, Region 5, in the category of secondary principal. Whereas Dr. Wells was recognized by Congresswoman Barbara Lee with a Certificate of Special Congressional Recognition in 2023 for creating the equity-based Young Men of Color Mentoring Program at Albany High School. In 2024, he also created the Young Women of Color Mentoring Program. He was a fierce advocate for all students, particularly students of color, and members of other underserved groups. Whereas at the time of his passing, Dr. Wells was serving as the California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators president-elect and had recently been awarded the Casa Marcus Foster Distinguished Educator Award. Whereas Dr. Wells led with compassion and grace, having a knack for making every person he interacted with feel they were the most important person in the room. This was evident in his mantra, to be hard on issues, soft on people. He was always optimistic and cheerful and loved nothing more than to visit our students to connect and learn with them as they excelled in their classrooms and cheer them on in theaters, concert halls, and athletic courts and fields throughout the district. Whereas throughout his career, Dr. Wells studied and spread the importance of early childhood literacy and the far-reaching impact it has on students' lives and their ability to succeed, supporting efforts to strengthen AUSD literacy programs and instruction during his tenure as superintendent. Whereas Dr. Wells brought wit, humor, and a willingness to roll up his sleeves to help wherever he was needed. He never lost sight of the immense responsibility to serve our babies, as he called them, to the best of his ability, while at the same time being lighthearted enough to ease tense situations with a joke and put on music or sing himself to lighten the mood and keep his team energized. He will be sorely missed, but his passion serves as an inspiration for us all. Therefore, be it resolved, the Albany Unified School District will name the Albany High School Library in honor of the late Dr. Wells as the Dr. Frank Wells Library. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Before we take a roll call vote to pass this resolution, does anybody have any comments either on the board or from the public? No, so we're going to move on to the roll call vote.
Oh, wait, no, I do.
Oh, you do? Okay, go ahead.
I just want to appreciate all of you for the thought and care and catching every single little phrase that we talked about that we wanted to honor him with. So thank you.
Mr. Kaysen,
Yes, just want to thank the board and also the committee. Dr. Wells created something that will outlast all of us, and I just want to thank you for recognizing and letting this be not only a symbol of hope, but also let this be a glimpse of what we all can become, an inspiration to students. And we think about, I'm thinking about the story that Dr. Wells shared when teacher found out he couldn't read, and how that teacher spent time with him. It gives us all the passion to know that every student is important, that every student is valuable. And just imagine if we did what Dr. Wells' teacher did for him by spending time with him and saying, I'm going to teach you how to read. Whatever that skill is or whatever that hope that our students need, if we can be that one to give the students exactly what they need. So I'm thankful for the time that we got a chance to spend with Dr. Wells, and I'm thankful for his passion, his courage of being a fearless leader, of voicing his concerns and saying that all of our students matter most to him. And so I'm just so excited now when I walk through the halls of the high school. I just can't wait to see that name that will be up, Dr. Frank Wells, and also being able to share with other students as they come through our high school doors the stories and the memories that I have of Dr. Wells and the mission and the purpose that I have because of the light that he shined in my life and the light that he shined in the lives of all of ours that's standing here today and sitting here today, but also for the future. Thank you so much for the resolution and the naming of the library for Dr. Frank Wells.
Are there any more comments? Thank you so much for those words, Mr. Kaysen, and to everyone on the committee who crafted that with such care. It's really evident. We can now make a motion to, would somebody like to move to?
Well, I move that we approve resolution number 2024-25-13, naming the Albany High School Library the Dr. Frank Wells Library.
I'll second.
Okay, and we're going to do a roll call.
Student Trustee Shepherd,
Yes.
Trustee Anklis,
Yes.
Trustee Kahn,
Yes.
Trustee Davidson,
Yes.
Vice President Mahoney,
Yes.
President Hopwood.
Yes. So that resolution passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we are going to move on now to item 10, which is approval of the consent calendar. Do we have any questions or comments from the board before we move on?
Yes, I would like to pull item 10F. That's the approve the purchase of Chromebooks for one-to-one device refresh for the 2025-2026 school year.
Great, and I am going to pull items 10, J, K, L, and M. Anybody else have any other questions or? Right, so we can do this is we can approve the consent, the rest of the consent calendar, and then we'll get to those items. So I have a motion to approve the rest of the consent calendar minus those items.
I move to go forward with the rest of the items on the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, so the consent calendar passes with the exception of F, J, K, L, and M. So Trustee Davidson, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. So I've emailed about this, that I was going to raise this, but I was actually surprised to see this on here because in October, the board had a conversation about some funds that we had and clearly stated the direction at the end that we needed to have a conversation about our district's technology plan. And so I think we can't approve a refresh of Chromebooks until we discuss what our plan is moving forward. We heard Kim Gray raise that our internet is an issue at some of the sites and our connectability is an issue. So that was something we needed to discuss and just how we were going to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of different ways of looking at this. I think my concern would be that we have some Chromebooks that are in need of replacement. So I wonder whether, I mean, this is just really to approve this refresh, but I wonder if there's anything to add.
Yeah, I will definitely call Chris Thomas, interim CBO, up. But before she speaks, I do want to just mention that it is absolutely my intention to work with the community and specifically our educators to create a really strong and robust technology plan. Part of that plan is not just what technology we use or how we refresh it or what our budget is for that, but also be really intentional about why we're using technology, how we use technology, when we start to roll out the use of technology in different grade levels from a developmental standpoint and also from what's good for kids. And I think there's a lot that we need to discuss about technology right now. We know that AI is with us, and it actually changes, I believe, that at a rate of 100x a day. And so there's a really big conversation we need to have. That said, I also recognize that we do have Chromebooks that are aging out right now, and they do need to be replaced. And if we don't replace them now, what we might run the risk of is they won't be available when we need them, because many districts are in this position right now where they have to do this Chromebook replacement. And I know in my past, in other districts, when we have gone to do a replacement, sometimes it can take quite a long time to get the Chromebooks because the manufacturers can't create them fast enough. So I'll let interim CBO Chris Thomas share a little bit more.
Thank you. And you're right, the end of October, we did come to you with a presentation on the budget, and that included a slide on kind of what an overall cost would be in looking at a refresh and how to really operationalize as part of the budget process so that we every year are kind of spreading out the cost instead of doing balloon payments, if you will. We did include that budget assumption in our first interim report. And so in first interim, we included an assumption, 2 new assumptions at the time. One was starting to set aside about $150,000 a year for instructional materials, textbooks in particular, because we need to start also saving up money for textbook adoptions. There's no direct state funding for that any longer. And we also included $250,000 as a contribution to a new fund to say, okay, we need to start setting aside money for computer replacement. So that was an assumption we included in first interim, so the money was budgeted for at that time. So this particular item does not create any direct input or impact on the general fund. That said, I would also say, in working with Dr. Polovich, part of what we're looking at with this refresh is the testing piece. We have a need to get ready for testing in April, May, and having adequate Chromebooks on hand to do that important testing. And then part of those Chromebooks would then also be deployed as a refresh in addition to that. And Superintendent Stone is absolutely correct that if we don't get ahead of the curve and start ordering soon, that could be potentially a problem. It's not only just getting our hands on the Chromebooks themselves. All districts right now are looking at this. It's also about the IT staff having the capacity to roll them out. And so we're looking at doing the purchases kind of in phases. The first phase being purchasing, 60 to 75 Chromebooks now, so we can start getting them ready for testing. We also don't have a warehouse, so we can't really have 900 Chromebooks delivered and stored somewhere. So the goal of this item is not in any way to say we're going to order 900 Chromebooks right now, but it's really to give us authority to start rolling that out as we get ready for the summer. So that's kind of what I know at this point. Is there any other information I can provide that would be helpful?
Can you, sorry, it just says on here, funded by a new resource established for one-to-one student device refresh, resolution 9065. Is that our resolution 9065, or is that something else?
No, it's not a resolution. It's in the standardized account code structure world, the language that we speak in accounting for public schools, resource is a source of funding. And so it's like its own little fund that we create within the general fund on the restricted side. So we're making a contribution to that to kind of create this account, if you will, that we can then, again, operationalize. So we're putting in a standard amount every year, knowing one year we might spend $300,000, one year we might spend $0. But every year, on average, we're putting that amount of money in, so we don't look at these balloon payments. It becomes kind of the amount that we budget. And that's the operationalizing it perspective. Unfortunately, there's no direct funding source from the state for technology. And I would say Chromebooks is just, or one-to-one student devices is just one item. There's also teacher devices and staff devices. I mean, part of what we also need to do is really start building in, to Superintendent Stone's point, a technology plan, because we've also been talking about that. How do we replace and refresh teacher devices and staff devices? Because those items are actually a greater cost. There's fewer, but to the points made earlier, technology is a part of our life now. We cannot run school without computers. How much students use clearly is an instructional side of the house conversation that needs to happen.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments from the board?
I just wanted to make one comment. We in the policy committee are going to talk about phone policy and technology use policy very soon. And many of our policies we're just approving in our committee, and everyone's welcome, but bigger decisions like that will come to the board and will come to talk. And they are very important, and I think we do need to talk about how things are now versus 5 years prior. But I don't think that it's practical right now to separate a bigger plan and policy that we need from a practical decision we need to make now, which is the Chromebooks are in pretty bad shape in the schools and they're needed. So I think we need both, and I don't think one should be dependent on the other.
Do we have any public comment?
Oh, I have one more question, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
So another thing that I had brought up a long while ago is, as we're having our students on devices, and Chris Knight, you kind of pointed this out in your comment earlier, 50% of your students are paying attention. Well, we're not currently monitoring what our students are doing in our classrooms when they're on devices. In Oakland, we have Go Guardian installed on the teacher's computer, and I can literally see what every single student is doing on their computer. And I asked Dr. Wells, unfortunately, it was right in the time before we lost him. He said under our umbrella of programs and services, this was something that was there, and I've been like bringing it up and reminding that we need this. We should not have one-to-one devices unless the teacher can see what's happening on those district-provided devices in the classroom at all times and control it. You can shut a kid down immediately. I'm like, oh, you're on YouTube, and that song is not happening in our classroom. Off. So it gives them the freedom, but it also gives the teacher that comfort, and it gives us as a district the ability to say, we're really monitoring these. And so I guess these are like the kind of conversations where it's like, yes, we need to put the money aside for this. I would feel more comfortable saying that this agenda item is, we are establishing the fund. We are agreeing to fund it. I'm not 100% comfortable saying that, yes, let's purchase 900 Chromebooks in this rollout. Like, maybe let's purchase what we need right now, those ones you were saying. And then let's, before April, have another conversation about, are we going to continue with Chromebooks? Is that the only option? Is one-to-one what we're doing? What else do our classrooms need to be 21st century technology ready? And you know, those kind of things. So that would be my position on it. And I would also put in the caveat that if we approve this, we have to make the commitment that we're establishing the monitoring on the devices. Yeah.
So my point was going to be exactly what you've just outlined. I think we need to look at it in phases. So we say phase one, we talked about testing and being able to replace devices that have aged out or are broken. I know there are many of those, particularly at the younger, you know, like at middle school, for example, just because they were sort of carrying them around and throwing backpacks. But I would like us to have a much broader conversation about our general plan for technology before we look at implementing the whole refresh. Would that be kind of in line with what you were saying? Go ahead.
But this item is not to refresh all of them. This is the money to allocate for the first phase of refresh, which this is my understanding at least, that includes the required, basically the required devices that we need in order to do testing properly in April. Get me right on the timeline. I'm a little bit. So I'm actually. I would. You know, I would like to actually, like, let's continue to move. Like, we have devices that are not functioning, and we need to get that working from a classroom perspective. I don't disagree that having a broader conversation about the role of technology and how we want to support it and what have you is absolutely something that we should do. I'm not saying no that we should have the automatic monitoring, but I'm not ready to do that on the fly here in the meeting. I would rather have a broader conversation about what does that mean. Whether that's a burden we want our teachers to take on, and what's the best way to do it. I just am not educated enough on what that actually looks like to make a determination of that at this time.
And I'll say that, to me, sounds like, you know, that's a how thing, but I had to bring it up from a teacher perspective of being in a classroom and facing some of these things that are happening with technology, and you're ultimately responsible as the classroom teacher for what is happening on devices in your classroom, and that's a lot. That's also a lot to put on. So yes, we can have that, or we can just say, hey, this is a concern that either we all have as a board, or I'm just raising it as one person on that. My concern is that the title of this consent item states, approve purchase of Chromebooks for one-to-one student device refresh for 2025-2026 school year. And in it, it says the district intends to purchase 900 Chromebooks per year with those. It doesn't say in here that we're going to put it over 3 years. So I just think that if we approve this with the wording as is, we're approving not what we just discussed. what was kind of just presented, so.
If I could just clarify, it is actually, the agenda item was, the intent of it was for the board to approve up to 900 Chromebooks this year for rolling out. Because if you think about the incoming ninth grade class, well, number one, I don't know that the board item actually said, last year we skipped a year, we didn't really buy Chromebooks. So that, my understanding of the rollout plan, if you will, was that we would buy about 25% every year and then skip a year, which is why I'm trying to say, let's operationalize it and make a payment every single year for this, creating this fund, if you will. The 900 is really to support a class of roughly 300-ish incoming ninth graders who are who have older Chromebooks, who will not have a Chromebook for us to give them going into ninth grade. So the idea was you give all incoming ninth graders a Chromebook so that they have that for the 4 years. In addition, we do have Chromebooks that are dying and that need to be replaced, or kids lose them, and the testing piece. And the other piece was for incoming sixth graders to also get something next year, because the Chromebooks are aging. They're 4 or 5 years old at this point that these kids have. So it's not to replace all of them. There's roughly almost 3,000 Chromebooks, 3rd through 12th grade. And so we're just suggesting 900. Now, the board could easily tonight say, we'd like to approve up to 100. That would keep us going, and then we could come back in another month, even at first interim, to say, okay, here's more conversation, or here's a process that staff would recommend. Because moving from one-to-one to we're not sure what it's going to look like in future, typically that's several months of conversation to figure out how to make a change from mostly one-to-one, 3rd through 12th grade, to something different. And so that might take time, and the district may not be ready by the start of school to make a shift and a change. So it's really, how do you get through the next school year, buying yourselves time to have this conversation, is what I would suggest.
Any more questions or comments from the board?
I would ask that we, however we choose to approve this, or not approve this, that we also ask for some spotlights on how we're using these in our different areas of learning. That could be helpful as we're moving forward. But I don't, are we using these in every single class all day? Are all students taking these home and back? We're saying they're throwing them around in backpacks, so we're paying for kids to take something home, to and from school, that they're then freaking. They are our students, I totally get it, but I just think these are all parts of the conversation, and I'd like to hear more. At middle school, are we using them in all classes all the time? Yeah,
So I would say that the throwing around of backpacks, that was happening and is now not happening, because I've learned that they have Chromebooks that they keep at home, and then there are carts now. They've reintroduced the Chromebook carts at school. So there are different methods of implementing the program, the Chromebook program.
It's different by age group.
Yeah.
My son brings his Chromebook back and forth to school every day.
So that's a good point, that we want more information about how it's being run across grade levels. If there's no more comment from the board, I'm going to open it up to the public if anybody else wants to. Did you have any? Okay. Anybody in the audience want to speak to it? Great. Oh, yeah, Johnny, I'll come to you in a second.
If I can just repeat what you said, that we don't, we have Chromebook carts in the classroom where the students can you not hear me? Sorry. Can you hear me? What, I'm sorry? Okay.
You're good.
Okay. So we have Chromebook carts in the classroom. Every classroom has a Chromebook cart, but the students don't bring the Chromebooks back and forth anymore because of the damage that was being done at pretty rapid rate, but we have stopped that so that now they only use the Chromebooks. It was also a problem with the students taking out the Chromebooks out of their backpacks and use it at whatever or doing whatever, so now that we have more control over it, we use it just when we find it necessary. And one time it will be very necessary, of course, is the state testing. And I do LPAC testing, so I need to make sure Chromebooks work for that as well. We did get, so we have old Chromebooks in the classroom where not all of the Chromebooks, we can't get onto the to do state testing on them because they're just too old. And the window opened on February 1st, and I have until May 30th. And so it's very important to be able to do that because, of course, as everyone knows, it's state mandated. So the Chromebooks, we definitely need them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Paulson, would you like to?
Hi, I'm John Paulding, previously the lead campus supervisor at the middle school. I am a campus supervisor at the high school. I'm bringing up our camera situation, since you're talking about technology. The camera situation is very, very poor and very outdated. I believe at the high school, they have not been replaced since they were installed. That means since the school was built. There's a lot of dead spots, and it really, really, really needs to be updated. I don't know about the elementary schools. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know about their security or whatever, but I believe they need security there and need someone to monitor their cameras as well. So that is what I'm up here to ask.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt, but we'll definitely look at that in the future, but I'm trying to keep the conversation to the Chromebooks at the moment, but I do
It's just technology.
totally appreciate that. Thank you so much for drawing our attention to it. Thank you. And now I was going to see if there's anybody in the virtual audience that would like to comment. If there is, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Okay, so we just need to figure out what we are comfortable with right now, and it sounds like we are leaning towards identifying what the need is in terms of sufficient Chromebooks for testing as a priority and replacing defunct Chromebooks. So how would we come up with a number?
Well, I know in working with Dr. Polovich, we're looking at that 60 to 100 number specifically for testing. So I would say for tonight, minimally, I would recommend at least that.
Before you make a motion, can I also add potentially another 300 for the incoming freshmen? Because that's something, I mean, we have a very short window, so I think a middle ground of 500, I think, should be sufficient to hopefully cover at least the incoming 9th grade, as well as enough for testing, and any that may be dead.
So that gives us a bit of time then also to be able to have broader conversations about our sort of plan with Chromebooks and technology.
It's 272,715 buys 900 Chromebooks.
Yes, that's based on the current price, yes. I would also just say, I would just also say that's based on today's prices, and we all know that components for computers could be changing in the upcoming months.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve this package as it is written, with the caveat that we have a follow-up on monitoring student use on our devices, and we have board discussions around technology plan moving forward. Okay.
Second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So that passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so now we're just moving on to the other consent items. We pulled 4 other consent items, which are the job descriptions, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, the Administrator on Special Assignment, Teacher on Special Assignment, and the Substitute Administrator. These ended up on consent just for a variety of reasons, and we recognize that that's not the optimal place on the agenda for them. So happy to have more of a conversation if there's any clarification needed. And I've got Chief Human Resources Officer Gonzalez is here to explain a bit more.
I was realizing maybe that we should have moved the superintendent report above the consent calendar. So I don't know if you wanted to maybe at some point give your report or present portions of your report in advance of any of this.
We can do that. Yeah, we did have that conversation, and it wasn't deemed necessary, but actually perhaps it will be necessary. So we can can we do? We can make a motion, we can adjust our approval of the agenda. If we want to have the superintendent's report sooner to move it off from where it is on the agenda, is that what you're suggesting?
Or just if you had portions of it that might help people understand what is going on here.
Oh, yeah, so you could just weigh in. Yeah.
We have, I feel like the public doesn't have the context that some other people might have, and that's really helpful.
So we could hear from Ms. Gonzalez first, perhaps, and then superintendent could add.
Sure, and I also would add that there's an action item, I think, that's also relevant to all of this. So, do you want me to dive into what our plans are in the future, or would you just prefer that I just review the job description?
Why don't I start?
Okay.
I'm not going to present my superintendent's report right now. At the end of the meeting, I'll be when I'm on the agenda, I'll be presenting what I am asking to do as a bit of a reorganization at our district home office, specifically with our executive team and our team who works around curriculum instruction. So one of the things that I will need in order to present that reorganization is actually the positions to go with that reorganization. I want to reduce the number of people that are on the executive team, the executive cabinet, and I want to rethink how the position around curriculum and instruction is organized, and what that role is. And so that is one of the positions that we're working on having approved tonight, which is which would be the executive director of teaching and learning. That position would be focused on ensuring that all things teaching and learning are happening, and that there's support around that. There's professional development, not only for teachers, but also for leaders, and would continue to do some of the things that had been previously under two of the executive cabinet positions that would be eliminated. Including LCAP, including overseeing assessment and data, things like that. In order to really ensure that we have everything that we need operating at a district level, it's important that we also look at how different positions are focused on the things that we need to focus on, so that we're ensuring that we are using our funds appropriately. There's a tie between what happens in the CBO's office, the Chief Business Officer's office, and program, which is under this executive director of teaching and learning. And a big part of that is how are we monitoring our federal and state funding, our supplemental funding, not from an accounting perspective, but how are we doing in terms of the program? And are we doing what we're supposed to do with the program appropriately? And so that's a big compliance piece that is somewhat missing right now from our district. And I think the one thing I've said many, many times since I've been here, in my very short not even 2.5 months yet, is that we need a more robust data and assessment system so that we can make decisions based on information and based on data. We have some of those pieces, but we do not have all of them. And so the replacement of these 2 positions with 3 would be really to create all of the positions and all of the work streams that we need to move our district forward in a really intentional and thoughtful and strategic way. It's also important to note that, and I think one of the questions that keeps coming up is, well, what does this mean for school sites? Are schools going to lose funding because we're trying to create more positions, or couldn't that have funding gone towards something at school sites? I don't want us to continue on this zero-sum game, because it's not. We are a unified school district, and everything that we do at the district home office needs to be in support of what's happening in classrooms. It needs to be in support of ensuring that our students are getting everything that they need. I was very moved by the resolution for Dr. Frank Wells, because I think much of what he stood for is what I stand for. And for me, every single student needs the thing that they need so that they can excel. And if we don't have the right systems in place at the district home office, it's going to be really hard to make sure that we can encourage and support what's happening in the classroom. So the 3 positions that we're proposing tonight are really about ensuring that our systems are working at the district home office.
Thank you. Any more to add?
No. Thank you. So we have a series of job descriptions here that we are bringing to the board for approval this evening. The first is the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, which you heard will be responsible for overseeing all things teaching and learning. This position, you've had a chance to review the job description. It is same like all of our other certificated management executive level positions, works a 225-year calendar, and is on range 405 of the salary schedule. I realized there were some questions about what does that salary range mean. So like for someone like me who every day goes to our public website and goes to HR and goes to salary schedules, it's like, oh, it's no-brainer. Everybody knows where that lives, but not everybody does. And so what you guys have tonight is just a copy of the salary schedule, so you can see what that range looks like in terms of salary, and we have more copies available for the public, I think on that table over there. And so you can see what that salary range is, and that's a range that already exists, and that is the same range for all of our executive team. And my apologies for not listing the actual dollars. Yeah.
Do we have any questions from the board? And do we have any questions from our audience, either in person or virtually? I am not seeing any. Go ahead.
What is the number on this one?
405.
Do I just not see 405?
So on the salary schedule on the left-hand side. Yeah, 405, yeah.
Any further questions or comments? I'm not seeing any in our virtual audience either. Yeah, Trustee Davidson.
I guess, just so that we put it out there, the board has asked a lot of questions about how this is going to impact our budget and what are the realities here? And we've gotten a lot of information about that. And, I'll just speak for myself. I feel comfortable with sort of the plan that's been laid out, and I think we all understand putting these on consent was not the right move, and more discussion would be good about it, but I think sometimes we need to just trust that the process, like someone has the guidance thought about and is ready to do that, and has everybody's best interest in mind, and so, we have really asked the questions, and we've really dug in deep, and I think that will be made more transparent and clear very shortly.
Yeah, I agree. And also, while we're here and talking, we've just talked about those 3 job descriptions that are replacing 2 current positions, and there is an additional job description here, which is the substitute administrator, just so we can kind of deal with all of these in one vote with any luck. Well, we might just go separately, but while we're talking about job descriptions, is there anything we'd like to add about the substitute administrator role?
Yes. We are very fortunate that we have some really strong assistant principals at our middle and high schools. And unfortunately, we do not have assistant principals at the elementary schools, which is very consistent with most school districts across California. One of the unintended consequences of that, however, is that when a principal has to be off-site for, more than just a doctor's appointment or, maybe a sick day, there really isn't an administrator on campus that can continue to run the show. There are a couple ways that we can work on that. One way is there's a possibility of talking with our teachers union, and sometimes there can be a teacher in charge. That also can cause a lot of unintended consequences because teachers, as we know, their best and most important job is in the classroom with our students, and anytime we take their attention away from that, we're not doing what's best for kids. And so I think it's important that we have the opportunity or the ability to have a substitute administrator come in when principals are unable to be at school for multiple reasons. I would say that we want to reserve this. This isn't like every single time a principal needs to call out, we automatically get a sub-principal. I think that there are ways that schools can operate, and we also, we can support in different capacity from the district home office capacity standpoint, although that's also untenable because every time somebody from the district home office goes to a school site, that means that work is not happening at that home office space. And so as we continue to get more and more transparent about roles and responsibilities and the work streams that we have across our district, I think it'll be really clear how important it is that people continue to do the work that they are meant to do. So for that reason, having the ability to call in a sub-administrator, and these tend to be retired principals who just want to come in and support schools. Sometimes they are not retired principals, they're just administrators who just, this is what they like to do, and this is their jam. So just looking at making sure that we have the ability to do this, to keep our schools running and safe and focused on kids.
I do see that we have a commenter in the virtual audience, and I'm going to get to that person in a minute. But first, is there anybody on the board with a question about this particular role?
I have a question about 10K, the administrator on special assignment. I understand what a teacher on special assignment is, but is there something specific about that being in the title? Like, is it a temporary position, or that's just the title?
It means that they're focused on something very specific. So in this case, this person would be focused on monitoring our state and federal programs and our other special programs.
Are there any more questions or comments from the board? Okay.
Can I say one thing?
Go for it.
So I want to acknowledge that I put these job descriptions on consent, as has been our practice for a very long time. But because I thought, well, okay, it'll explain itself. The agenda will explain itself with some of the things that are coming on. And so I just followed our usual practice, but now, seeing this, that folks wanted to have a little bit more conversation about this, and so I just want to own that and apologize.
I know they don't have to be on consent, but it's just that when we had last month, we had one that was not, so I think it's just about consistency probably, and that's key thing. And we do have a virtual commenter. So go ahead.
Hi, thank you. So I am a teacher at the high school. I've been there forever. Marina, I love you. Don't apologize. I love you. I just want to say that I am a little bit confused about, well, the salary range thing was weird. And I know that maybe that's a new practice, that you're not, you're using a different criteria to post the jobs. But the job I'm really curious about, I think that I heard Superintendent Stan say you want to cut down on jobs at the executive cabinet level, and then 2 jobs are being potentially eliminated and 2 are being added, and they're different. And so the federal state, that one, the second one that we just looked at, that's the one I don't understand. And I think that larger districts that have more, like, let's say, for example, Title I kids or whatever, they might have that position. And I'm curious why a district the size of Albany would have such a position added. And I don't think that it really fits with the whole, we want to cut down on staff when we're really adding 2 new positions to replace 2 positions. That's my confusion, and that's why I reached out to you guys over the weekend. And anyways, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your efforts. Thank you. That's all.
Thanks.
If the board would like for me to answer the question, I can. Yeah.
Superintendent Stone,
So
would you answer?
the position of administrator on special assignment is actually not an executive team position. So the cabinet is being reduced by 1 position next year. It's also an administrator on special assignment is, I would say, commensurate with an assistant principal salary.
Elementary principal.
Elementary principal salary. So it is quite a different level of a position than an executive team member.
Thank you for the clarification. Anybody else have questions or comments, either on the board or here or virtually? Oh, here we go. Go ahead, online.
So thank you for that clarification. And I guess that it sounds like that would be, though, a new administrator position. If it's on the level of elementary administrator, it's still a new administrator position. So that's the thing I would like the board to grapple with. Is this a thing we need? That's all. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I just had a short comment. As the rep for Ocean View, I do want to acknowledge that we do have a Title I school. I know we don't talk about it often, but our students need the support, and this role in particular is going to help us look at, this whole package is going to help us look at a lot of the areas that we have not been able to address in a way that was needed, but also get us out of survival mode and actually acknowledge, like, okay, these are the areas, particularly our data, particularly special education. Like, we need a lot of work to be done, and we can't continue to be in a mode of survival. This elimination of 2 executive level positions and then bringing in 4 people to make sure that we get as much of the work done is extremely necessary, and what's going to help keep as much resources with our students. I know we've had a robust conversation, and it's hard for everyone else to see all of the discussions and really trust me, we were all like, what do you mean you're gonna bring back 4 people? We were,
3.
Well, 3 initially, and a sub. But just, we had that entire conversations, and we had tons of questions, and every single question Dr. Stone has been able to answer and actually show us exactly where we're missing a lot of the, I said Dr. Stone. But yeah, I just want to acknowledge all of that, and just, a lot of the information that is currently needed is also going to be addressed later on in a review and action item, 12A, as well as the superintendent's report. And so I would just say hold tight and keep faith that your board has been asking a lot of tough questions that you do not get to see. Unfortunately, I wish we could, have those discussions in public, but we can't, especially when it comes to personnel items and so forth. So it's not, yeah, I don't know how else to end that, but yeah.
I guess I want to maybe just add a little bit to that it's not that we can't say what we've discussed in those times. We can share a good amount. I think also, though, we're trying to get a little more clear on what are the best operational practices as a district for us to help like move forward and for us to say, okay, superintendent, the board has one employee. That's the superintendent. We have one. That's the one person that we can say, we can give direction to. How the superintendent does that is up to the superintendent, and then we evaluate that and do those things. And so if the superintendent is saying, in order to meet the goals and do these things, this is what I need, sometimes it is a board's role to just say, okay, we're going to trust in this right now. Here's the balance of that. We hear that our community does not want a top-heavy district office, but we also do not want to lose federal grants, funding opportunities, things that can actually benefit our students that we maybe have been not able to access in the past or at risk of other things happening because we haven't checked all the boxes. And so I think right now the board is saying, yes, so I'm going to make a motion that we approve 10J through 10J, 10K, 10L, and 10M.
I'll second.
Too slow. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Hearing nobody, so that passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. Okay, we are now moving on to our staff reports, 11A. It's the LCAP, and Superintendent Stone is going to present that.
All right, thank you, trustees and President Hopwood. Tonight, I am going to present our mid-year update on our local control accountability plan. Dr. Shin, who is going to be here tonight, unfortunately was out on jury duty today, and so I have taken on this presentation. So Senate Bill 114, which was passed in 2023, added a requirement that local education associations, have to do a presentation annually on and update the community on our local control accountability plan. Sorry, I'm very tongue-tied all of a sudden. Breathe. Okay. And give an update on the budget. This is an important part of this process, given that the Local Control Accountability Plan, or LCAP as I will call it for the rest of the presentation, really is what we are doing and how we are resourcing it. So what we're supposed to do, and we have to do that by February 28th. What we're supposed to do in this LCAP presentation is make any available data based on our goals clear and show how we're currently, where we are currently with our expenditures in the LCAP. So when we adopted the LCAP in June of 2024, the State Budget Act was not complete. And what this means is that we did an adopted budget with what we thought we were going to be spending. And then, of course, then we eventually adopted the actual budget. So you can see here the total LCFF funds, local control funding formula funds, and supplemental and concentration grants that were adopted in June, and then how much we actually received. So at this point of the year, some of our metric outcomes are still unknown, and this actually goes back to part of what I was talking about before. We should have much more robust information and data at this point of the year, and when we have a really strong and robust data and assessment system, we'll be able to actually give a lot more information at this point of the year. And so right now, I'm going to share with you what we know. And we will continue for the remainder of the year to monitor progress. And at the end of the year, I am planning on doing an end-of-year presentation about what I call our vital signs. If you think about, you go to the doctor, and every time you go to the doctor, they check your vital signs to see where you are and your health, your overall health. What I will be bringing to our district is something similar, where we'll be checking our academic health of our district several times a year. And next year, when we do the LCAP update, it will be a vital signs presentation. So we'll see where we are at that point. So at the end of the year, we'll be bringing in more data. Oop. Did it go? Okay, good. So we have several goals in our LCAP, assess and increase student achievement. And our goals are great goals, 100%. We want 100% of all of our students to have fully credentialed teachers who are appropriately assigned. We want 100% access to instructional materials for all students, and we want 100% ratings of how things are going from a self-reflection perspective. And so you can see at the end of 23-24, there were 3 misassigned teachers, so we did not achieve that goal. And yet we did achieve the goals for the other 2. I know it's taken a minute, sorry. What's going on with my? Did I go too far? I apologize. There we go. Okay, there we go, so sorry. Some more of our goals under the assess and increase student achievement. We do have a goal around increasing the number of students who receive the Seal of Biliteracy. Seal of Biliteracy is actually one of the ways that the California dashboard measures college and career readiness for students. So there was a goal of increasing by 32%, and reclassification of our English learners to redesignated fluent English proficient. We had a goal to reclassify 20%, and as you can see, we fell short on that goal. We had also the goal of making progress for 70% of our students towards English language proficiency, and again, we're falling a little bit short of our goals. Another way that we measure college and career readiness is through CTE completion, CTE pathway completion, and we had a goal of maintaining or exceeding 11% of our students on a CTE pathway, and you can see that we actually we met our goal. The goal of reaching 72% of all of our students scoring 3 or higher on 2 AP exams, you can see the data there. I think the thing I want to highlight there is that there's some disproportionality, and that is something that we definitely want to continue to focus in on. Again, going back to my predecessor, Dr. Frank Wells, I could imagine his voice that this is not okay and that we need to do better. College and career preparedness, again, measurement through the CASP. You can see, again, we're falling short of our goals. Not massively short when we look at all students, but again, when you start to look into different groups of students, and specifically student groups that have been historically marginalized and racialized, we're seeing some disparity, and those are things that we really are going to have to address when we look at updating our LCAP. All right, UC and CSU entrance requirements. You probably heard of A through G course alignment, and that's what that is. Again, we wanted 75% of our graduates meeting UC or CSU requirements. Again, we're not there. This is something I do want to start to talk about more and more, because I think at the bare minimum, every single student in our high school should at least have access to A through G courses, and that should be a part of our graduate graduation requirement. And so I'm going to be having conversations across our district as we start, as I move from a listening campaign more to a here's what I've heard campaign. But this is something that's come up in different conversations with students, with families, and with staff. Another college and career readiness indicator is just how many of our students are prepared. So at the end of the day, are we graduating kids who are prepared based on the California dashboard to be ready for college and career? And again, you can see where we are. All right, goal two, this is supporting the whole child, increasing graduation rates, decreasing high school dropout rates, and maintaining middle school dropout rates at 0%. Again, we're sort of, if we look at the whole picture, we're sort of on par with where our goals are. However, when you start to go deeper and deeper, you see where those gaps are. Decreasing high school graduation rates, again, I think the data speaks for itself. I think what I really want to highlight there that is an area of concern for me is when we look at students with disabilities. I'd actually like to see a 0% high school dropout rate in our district, and so that is something that we'll be continuing to have conversations about. And I'm very pleased to see that we don't have students dropping out of middle school. Decreasing chronic absenteeism by 50% for all students. We know that after coming back from the pandemic, chronic absenteeism continued to be a problem and continues to be a problem across the entire country. And so you can see that we wanted to decrease by 50%. If I don't have comparisons here from other districts, but if you were to look at other districts, I would say that we're actually doing fairly well in terms of chronic absenteeism. I still would like to see us meet our goal at least, and definitely meet our goal when we look at across our groups of students. And again, just highlighting students with disabilities, really wanting to make sure that we're focused on that, what's going on there, and some of the other groups as well. Suspension rate, similar. We really need to look at that. We want to make sure that we are not disproportional. We also want to look at I'd like to do some deeper dives into the suspension rate data. What are we suspending for? And are those things that maybe other programs could support? I see Mr. Kaysen in the office, or in the audience right now, and I think a lot of the work that he's able to do around restorative justice is something that we're really trying to have, not just at the high school, but at the middle school, at the elementary schools as well. And again, we're at a 0% expulsion rate, so we've met that goal. All right, LCAP expenditures. These are basically what we were given to spend, where we are currently. So I would say these next few slides show where we would expect to be at about mid-year, given our budget. And if you have any questions about these slides, I will definitely ask our interim CBO to come up and have more conversation. But just in terms of looking at goal one, what we budgeted in the different areas and where we currently are. And this was around instructional materials and cycle of continuous improvement. I will say that another piece of the changes that we might make in the LCAP, we really want to think about instructional materials and our curriculum. And I've heard loud and clear from many community members, teachers, and students as well, that there's some definite desire to do some thinking about new curriculum in elementary school specifically, but also some conversation at the middle school, especially in the 6th grade for English language arts. supporting the whole child. Here's where we are, social emotional health supports, and attendance reporting intervention. Communicate and lead together. We are definitely doing a great job with communication, and we are parent engagement. We have some funds set aside for that. One of the wonderings I have as we think about this is parent engagement. Is there more that we can be doing there, and what would that look like as we move forward next year? So in closing, definitely proud of some of the data, and I would say again, just still being able to wear the badge of I'm new and I'm from outside of the district coming in, although I am definitely all Albany now. I will say that in looking at where we are, we should feel a lot of pride. I think we have just some remarkable, incredible things going on in classrooms. We have just brilliant, beautiful, amazing children that I've been able to spend some time with. And we're doing some things really well around social emotional supports. Again, certain programs are really to be highlighted around, the work that's happening in the high school around restorative practices. And I think we definitely need to continue to prioritize our English learner programs, making sure that we're really supporting our students to transition into being fluent English proficient, but also really thinking about how are we continuing to honor home languages and the language that they bring, because there's so much richness with that. And then continuing to really address those persistent gaps for our historically underserved and marginalized communities. And specifically, I do really want to highlight our students with disabilities. And I think that focus in on what can we do to put more safety nets and supports in place is going to have to be a really big part of the plan that I'm going to be presenting to you after my 90 days. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody, and also Dr. Shin for her work on the presentation, and thank you so much for taking that on. Anybody here on the board with any questions or any comments for our superintendent? And anybody here in person like to make a comment or has a question? Go right ahead.
Just really quickly, thank you for that presentation, Superintendent Stone. And I know that you didn't actually put the slides together, but just a note for future presentations like this, maybe I was missing it, but there were various abbreviations where I wasn't certain what they meant. So that would be good to keep an eye on. And then also, I think there are places where Black/African American students aren't noted because the numbers are so low, but the result of that is that we're literally removed from the slides altogether. So I'm not sure the right way to address that, but I do think it's worth addressing. Thank you.
Thank you for those really good points. Anybody else in our audience have any questions or comments? And I'm not seeing any, and I'm not seeing any either virtually. So we can now move on from that report to our review and action section. And we're going to have our Chief Human Resources Officer, Gonzalez, again, item 12A, which is a resolution to reduce or discontinue certain positions.
Yes. Thank you. So this item, if we're able to show it, so this is the actual resolution. In the backup, as you've had a chance to read, is just mentioning, well, let me back up. This item really is about the superintendent's plan for reorganization that she discussed earlier. But in order to make those changes, when it comes to certificated personnel, we have to bring a resolution to the board prior to March 15th, and we have to notify folks prior to March 15th that these changes are coming. And so that is the purpose of this resolution. It's just to be compliant with the Ed Code as it relates to reduction of classifications in the certificated ranks.
Thank you. Does anybody on the board have questions or comments about this? Anyone else? Go ahead.
Does that mean all classified people will be reduced, their salaries or positions be cut out?
No, this has to do with, if we could show the resolution, this has to do with 2 specific classifications, and they are certificated, not classified.
Anybody else in the audience have a question? Go ahead.
Okay, so it's not a question, it's a comment. I appreciate all of the discussion that happened around proper placement of consent calendar things and trusting vision. Being on the other side of you have to trust that the board had a whole bunch of conversations that you didn't get to hear. It's a little bit difficult to swallow from this side of the table, even trusting very much all of the people who I'm looking at right now. So I would just appreciate the board members who pulled the various items from the consent calendar and gave the public a chance to have some sort of a view into what was happening, and just encourage the board and the superintendent to continue to give the public, without breaching confidentiality for personnel reasons, et cetera, but to give the public as much of a view into what's happening as is efficient and possible when, somewhat significant changes are being made.
Thank you for that comment. And I am not seeing any raised hands virtually. Are there anybody else?
Do you think that your later board report will give a little bit more information on this? I mean, I have a tiny piece that I can add about one of these that I don't think is too controversial.
I do think my board report will be supportive of the understanding behind some of the thinking with this. I also think, if I just may, I just want to remind people, and I recognize historically this time around March 15th in Albany and all school districts across California is incredibly painful and challenging, and that I just really want to name that behind every title is a human. And so I'm publicly, apologizing to the community that the way that the agenda was organized tonight seemed strange, and it was with trying to preserve dignity of the humans that are behind these titles. And so just to keep that in mind. And yes, my board report, I hope, will help explain a little bit more of what this will all look like. Of course, the board has to approve this, so I can then say this is what I'm hoping to do with all of this. So that's where we are right now. But I definitely just want to, again, I want to honor and appreciate people and how hard this is to see. And I think in the past and last year, I recognize that this was also, many of our of some of our lowest paid employees that were sitting, they're the people behind the titles. And I just really want to appreciate anyone who's ever had to be in the situation where there's a resolution before March 15th with their title.
Thank you, that was well said. Anybody have other questions or comments? And I'm not seeing any, so are we ready to move forward with a motion with this to resolution?
Move to approve resolution number 2024-2514.
I second the motion.
Okay, so it's a resolution, so we're going to do a roll call.
Student trustee Shepherd.
Sorry, yes.
Trustee Kahn.
Yes.
Trustee Davidson.
Yes.
Vice President Mahoney,
Yep.
President Hopwood,
Yes.
and Trustee Inglis.
Yes.
Right, we are now moving on to 12B, our second review and action item, which is appointments to the AUSD Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, and we have our interim CBO, Chris Thomas, here for that.
So as you're all aware, we passed a bond in November. Grateful to our very generous community here to do that. And then in January, you all certified or approved the certification by the county for those election results. And that starts a 60-day clock for us to then recruit and add members to our actually existing bond oversight committee. So we did have a very robust recruitment process. We received several applications. We reviewed those applications against what the vacant seats are. Remember, there's about 7 different types of seats. Most of them have only one person that fills them, and the public at large, has 4. So a couple of those seats actually have existing members in them, but we did have several vacancies. And so you can see here what those vacancies are. You can see active member of a business organization representing the business community, active member in a senior citizens organization, active member in a bona fide taxpayers organization, parent guardian of a child enrolled in the district, parent guardian of a child enrolled in the district and active in a PTA organization. And then, as I said, 4 public at large community members. And so we're very happy to announce that we, after a process of reviewing all the applications and seeing qualifications, et cetera, are recommending appointment of 3 individuals this evening. And here are the 3 individuals. And the applications, I believe, are attached. We did redact like the home address, et cetera. So our next step, we actually have a bond oversight committee scheduled for March 19th that we had scheduled with the 3 former or 2 ongoing, 1 member who's terming out. So we will be reaching out to these new members if you're appointing them tonight, and then we will be holding that first meeting on March 19th with the new committee members. In addition to that, we will begin recruiting again in order to try to continue to fill the vacancies, in particular business organization representing the business community. So with that, any questions?
I will be more helpful with the business community part of this. I feel like that should not be one that we have unfilled, so I will reach out to some people I know.
Thank you.
And I would note there was a timeline to submit applications. We did receive 1 or more after the deadline, and so those people will be reaching out to let them know they're certainly welcome to resubmit their application once we open a new window for these. So anyway.
Okay, any more board comments or questions? Anybody here? I'm not seeing anyone online either, so we could now, if I could go for it. A motion to approve these.
Sure. I move to approve the appointments to the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, so that passes. Thank you. Okay, we are now moving on to item 13, superintendent and board member reports. So, Superintendent, are you ready for your, yes, another one?
I'm ready for my close-up. All right. Okay, now I get it. There's a delay between my computer and that computer. That's what it's, okay. I'll get it together. All right. All right, thank you again, Board of Trustees and President Hopwood. Tonight, I am going to start with a draft land acknowledgement. In my last, well, it wasn't my last board report, but last board meeting I talked about wanting to bring a land acknowledgement to our board meetings in respect and relationship with a resolution that was passed in October. I've been working closely with a few teachers at the high school and community members, and just want to make sure that we're doing this really well and we're not going too fast. And so we've kind of come to we've made the decision that we want to name this and read this while we are still working on developing one that makes the most sense in community with the Lishan Nation. The hope is that we would then be able to actually, in October, there's Indigenous Peoples Day, we would like to then bring the new and agreed upon land acknowledgement that we would now start to read at every board meeting and at meetings that we hold across the district. But I am going to start tonight with acknowledging the land that we are on. AUSD is committed to honoring the Lishan Nation and supporting their sovereignty. This involves ongoing learning and actions. One action is giving a land acknowledgement. Doing that in a good way requires time to engage in learning and discussion and to receive the approval from the Lishan Nation. These words affirm our commitment to a process of deep integrity as we learn how to be good guests on the Lishan Nation land. So, as I said before, I am not quite done with 2.5 months. Today is day 52 of my time here in Albany Unified School District. When I first came and I did my first board report, I shared what I was planning on doing in my first 90 days. And as you can see, I am squarely still sort of in that first and second, now third-ish phase and moving towards the last phase. As you can see, the months don't line up perfectly. I also want to name that in the process, the school year continues to move forward. I started my first day was December 2nd. And the way that a school year works is you actually really start to plan for the following year when you start the year. So if I had started in July, I would have had some time to get to know the community, spend time learning, doing the things that I'm doing now, and really start to come, basically in September with, hey, I think there might be some things we want to think about as we're planning for next year. I've been working very closely with the executive team to talk about how are we going to create a very transparent and open budgeting process in the future. And unfortunately, because I did come in when I came into the year in December, the truth is that budgeting process, if it were to be as transparent as I would want it to be, would have already begun. And so we got where we got tonight because of when I started and because March 15th is a date that we can't move. We have to make some pretty serious decisions by March 15th and really by the end of February. So this is where we are right now. We have some things that we're still waiting for. The governor did release his budget proposal and trailer bill, and we're hoping with all of our fingers and toes crossed that what was proposed is what we will actually get, which is actually quite good, and we can actually potentially, interim CBO Thomas and I have talked about actually presenting a little bit of information about that to the board in the future. Again, March 15th, we just had an action item that was connected to that, and it's really important that we continue to keep moving forward as the year progresses, so that we're doing what we need, what we can to plan for a really good school year for 25-26. All right. So we talked about these in the LCAP presentation, but these are our 3 objectives. These are our 3 broad goals. assess and increase academic success, support the whole child, communicate and lead together. And under these objectives, we have some specific goals that have been outlined. We want to provide a comprehensive educational experience with expanded opportunities for engagement, assessment, academic growth so that all students will achieve to their fullest potential. We will foster the social and emotional growth of all students, implement an array of strategies to increase student engagement, identify individual socio-emotional and behavioral needs, and apply collaborative, appropriate interventions. And the last is all stakeholders will collaborate and communicate about decisions that guide the sites and district. So in the first 90 days, what I've been spending time doing is getting to better understand where are we with these three goals. Are we actually doing what we said we want to do? And again, we've talked about, I do need some more quantitative data to be able to look at this and really see, are we getting where we need to go? And I think as a district, we would benefit from really understanding what that data means. And I've also had the incredible opportunity to have some time to collect some qualitative data. So in qualitative data, I've heard some things. I've heard, we're doing some things really, really well. And I'm continuing to talk to people. I'm continuing to have one-to-ones with staff and groups of staff. I'm continuing to meet with students. Today I had the opportunity to go to the middle school, and my favorite place in the world. They're all my favorite places, by the way. You're gonna hear that every time I say that. But middle school kids are, I taught middle school, so I definitely love middle school. But they are so smart, and they say everything that they need to say, and they tell it exactly as it is, and they are not wrong. So they even mentioned some of the things that are here. But ultimately, what I have heard over and over again is, and it says strong class sizes, it's supposed to say smaller class sizes, enhance student engagement and success. I apologize for that. But these are some calls for improvement. We need to continue to provide diverse course offerings. And we also maybe want to think about what other course offerings we can provide that will continue to encourage our students to be excited about the opportunities that they can move towards in college and career and life. Definitely heard a call for more teacher collaboration time and support around that. Continuing to improve our focus on universal design for learning and interventions. Ensuring that all students not only have access to equitable pathways towards college and career, but also feel supported in the coursework that they're doing to complete those. We've talked about this a little bit more. We need to start to think a little bit about curriculum and adoption of curriculum, and we don't want to lose the sight of ensuring that historically marginalized communities and historically racialized communities are seen in that curriculum, and that the perspectives within the curriculum encourage a sense of belonging. Career readiness. Kids spoke to this quite a bit. They want to know what jobs are out there, and they want to know how to prepare for them. And one student said, we're not all going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher. What else is out there? And there are so many incredible jobs that are out there that every day I'm learning of new jobs that I never knew existed. And so how can we support our kids to not only know what those jobs are, but also do some training in high school and actually earlier to get them. A lot of conversation about math. A lot of conversation about math. So we have some work to do. I have spoken to math teachers at the middle and high school and talked about creating a math vision team, which would be a vertically articulated team starting with TK through 5, all the way through 12th grade, to really kind of get clear on what is our math vision across the district. If we want our kids to be able to get to college and career, complete A through G courses, do all the things that we want them to do in life, how do we backwards map from that? But how do we do it in a way that's actually supportive to the needs of students and the support that they need to be successful? And again, class sizes, that's a theme. That's a theme across the country too, just FYI. All right, around supporting the whole child, I think that there's some calls for improvement. There's a lot of success here, and I don't want to negate that. I think that in all of this, I just want to highlight that in these 3 buckets, there was a lot of really good things that were said about what's going well, but I'm really calling out the calls for improvement today because this is going to help, I think, the community better understand where I'm trying to head with the reorganization. Continuing to enhance and support our schools around mental health and inclusive environments for students. That's definitely, people appreciate what we have and the people that we have in those positions, and I've heard nothing but good things, and there's just a call for how can we have more. Again, really thinking about equity and access. How are we ensuring, we saw that in our data, how are we ensuring that we're meeting the needs of not all students, I want to say this very, very clearly, each student. Because when you say all, it kind of feels like, yeah, all students. No, each, every single student. Again, we think about behind the numbers as a human. How are we ensuring that each human is getting what they need? Continuing, this was a huge topic today, extracurricular activities. Our middle schoolers love, love, love the sports programs and the music programs. That was just so clear. And of course, they all want more. One of the things that the students said very loud and clear is, I want teachers who look like me. I want administrators who look like me. And so I think as we're looking at hiring, as we're looking at pipelines, internal pipelines, we have, paraprofessionals and other classified staff that maybe perhaps would really love to become teachers, and we need to support them to do so. Or we have people who would like to be administrators. We need to support that to happen. Already spoken about mental health, improving academic advising and communication for struggling students. Some students really lifted up. They have great counselors. They love, again, they have a lot of support, but there's things they don't know, and they don't know how to ask for what they don't know. So how can we, what can we do to think about that ahead of time? What are the questions that might be coming up that we can already just say, oh, we know kids ask about this often. Where do they get the information? So it doesn't have to depend just on counselors who have many kids that they're seeing, or teachers who have a lot of things going on. And I would say I've heard this through the listening campaign, and we saw this in the data. How are we really, really centering and supporting our students who have individual education plans? Communicate and lead together. Again, so many great things here. I will say one thing that came up over and over and over again from adults and from students is, while I know there's the term out there, small-Bany, while Albany is very small, that is actually something that people highlighted as a strength, that there really is a strong connection and sense of community. Students really love the fact that they told me 2 things. One, they love the fact that they know they have a core group of friends that are their friends. That's actually a gift. And the fact that they can go from their elementary school to middle school, keep those friends, but also make more friends, and then have the opportunity to be with those friends not only through middle school, but also through high school. That was something I heard over and over again from multiple different groups of kids. I also heard from staff, much of the reason why people stay so long in Albany and really have their whole career here is because of that connection and that community. And I think, some ways to continue to increase what's working really well here is to think about, again, going back to strong collaboration that is happening not just for teachers, but for our leaders. Our leaders, I can tell you, my favorite and the hardest job I ever had was being a principal. And I think our assistant principals and our principals continue to need that support to really continue to do the job well and to learn how to do the job even better. Having voice, families having a say in what's happening, and not just families who come through traditional ways of family engagement, but really thinking about what are other ways to hear the voices of families is definitely something that I've heard and something that I agree with. I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it. One of my core values is transparency, and so just continuing to work on our systems to be as transparent as possible, and thinking about those operational improvements. There are systems that have been in Albany for a long time, and unfortunately during COVID, many of those systems got dismantled. That just happened, not only in Albany. Again, most school systems, that was true. I think the unique thing is that when those systems got dismantled, there was also quite a big leadership change right at around the same time. And as we know, there's been just multiple years of trauma and tragedy that have happened in Albany. And so a lot of the systems that probably worked at one time were lost. And so we need to bring those back into Albany. And they have to be strong systems that can't be dismantled if somebody leaves. And I think, again, just going back to overall employee experience, it's important for me that if somebody calls the home office for support, that they receive that support. It's important to me that if there's an email or a phone call, that it gets answered. Customer service. We have to model that at the district home office, and that's something I've heard, many times. And I also want to name that part of what we also need to do is have the right people doing the right things at the district home office and have the time and space to do it. So something definitely that I've heard. So I would say, as we're starting to think about what is Sarah Stone's plan for the rest of the year, these are some emerging focus areas. They're broad, but I think they're also coming out loud and clear that this focus again on equity and inclusion, making sure that voices are heard and that we're really centering the voices and the experiences of the students and families and staff members in our community that have been historically marginalized. Belonging and well-being. We all know, and I said this in my last board report last time, if you don't feel safe and you don't feel a sense of belonging, you can't learn. Your brain will just not learn. It just stops. So we need to make sure that we are really prioritizing that. Transparency and collaboration, making sure that we continue, not just during my listening campaign right now, but that there's consistently a feedback loop, consistently hearing from community members and being really transparent about what we're hearing and also what our plans are and how we're making decisions. Those are very, very key themes. And action-oriented leadership. Again, going back to these systems. How are our systems helping to clear the path? Clear the path, not get in the way, but clear the path so that students get what they need. And so for me, what I wanted to do is really think about, how would a district be structured so that it's really clear what the roles and responsibilities are, and that we have people in the different departments to do the work, to again clear the way so that students can get what they need. And so that we're not getting into situations where, you know, we have great funding around certain programs, but because we didn't get that thing in on time, or because there wasn't somebody to do that thing, we lose the funding, or we have an audit finding, or we have, you know, calls to the district home office that aren't answered because there's just not somebody there to do it. So I've described earlier tonight what this new organizational chart would look like, and this is it on paper. I think I've explained the moves around executive team. What I haven't had a chance yet to explain is just a few of the other moves that, unfortunately, you know, we haven't had a chance yet to talk to these people, and so of course we want to make sure that we're being thoughtful and caring about that. But I really just want to reorganize a couple things that make more sense centered under different departments. So just some key highlights. Home and hospital really should be sitting under student services, and I don't think that that's where it was currently living, at least not from the org chart that I saw last. And I know there were some different iterations of the org chart when Dr. Evans was here as interim superintendent. I think another kind of move is that the transportation department really should be sitting under the chief business officer and not under special education, because it really is it's more of an operational service. Although, of course, that incredible man who I love to talk to, he's wonderful, Curtis, he's still going to be supporting our students who, with IEPs and who in that transportation for students so they can get to school. But it is really a business officer position. And other than that, there aren't many changes other than the elimination of 2 positions, the kind of replacement of 1 at the executive team, and then 2 new positions that would be under an Office of Teaching and Learning. What I do want to say about this as well is I'm really thinking very, very thoughtfully, okay, that was redundant. I'm thinking, what are all of the different jobs that sit under these? And I will be posting that as soon as I really have it all figured out. I don't want anyone to question, what does that person do? Who do I go to for what? When I call somebody for this, am I calling the right person? It should be very, very clear. And so I'm working really hard on that. But before I can do that, I need to make sure that this is going to be the org chart that we have. And with that, I have some next steps. I will continue to engage the community. I will continue to assess where we are with our sense of belonging and well-being. Continue to grow and enhance transparency. I want to say a little thing about this. Part of being a transparent leader, I think, is also being a lead learner. And so I really appreciated tonight in the meeting, we had an executive team member come up and apologize. And I want to also, apologize. I think we learn through our mistakes, and we learn when we don't do things perfectly, because nobody's perfect, right? But I think enhancing transparency is also being a learner. And so I really am hoping that as an organization, we're all able to open up the possibility of learning together and making mistakes together, but then coming together in community to own up to mistakes. And I think last is really the key, and that is in April, when I bring my final plan, what are the actionable strategies that we can move forward with for the remainder of this school year, but also into next year as we perhaps go into a more robust strategic planning process. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very enlightening. And now, Trustee Inglis with your board report.
So I have just a couple updates. I mentioned earlier the board policy committee met on the 4th of February. We had 170-ish backlogged policies. We've got through 29 that evening. So we're making progress. We mentioned that we're going through some of the more standard items we're getting recommendations from CSBA, so those are pretty quick, but we will bring the more impactful ones to the committees for discussion, like the phone and technology, which are important. Albany High School is looking for volunteers. A lot of people are turning over for the PTSA, Teacher Appreciation, and they're looking for people for the graduation committee. So 8th grade parents coming into the high school, 11th and 12th grade parents are needed. Please contact the PTA. And then finally, the Albany High School PTA went through a reflections program, an national art PTA contest. So a bunch of high school students participated. I think there was 31. 5 of our high school students won awards at the local level. Kira Milana, Felipe Toledo, Summer Shen, Evelyn Mullen Caro, sorry if I'm pronouncing that, and Alana Zuniga. And 3 of them are actually going to the state competition. So Kira, Felipe, and Evelyn are going to the state competition for art. So congratulations.
I usually said this to former trustee Boyd, that it's hard to follow that up. I will say it's hard to follow up such an amazing, everything that our students are doing. But I just have 3 quick things. We had the Lunar New Year celebration this past weekend with an estimated 200 to 260 people in attendance. This is the largest attendance that we've had, and also the most diverse attendance. As our planning committee, we've been trying to make sure that we're engaging the larger AUSD community and not just the API community when we host these events. The goal is obviously, to share our culture and our heritage with the rest of the community. So that was really wonderful and exciting. And then the new parent engagement group, SWANA, is having their first ever Ramadan potluck celebration at Ocean View MPR March 7th from 6 to 8 p.m. There's a potluck sign up that's going around, again, in order to help the community learn about the various cultures that exist within our community. So please join that if you can. And then lastly, our PTA at Ocean View will be hosting their election soon. If you're interested in running for any of the PTA positions, please reach out to the president or other PTA board members. That's all.
My report has a slightly different tone. I just want to remind us that we need to have a discussion around our traffic safety and our mass number of students exiting our schools all at one time. I was going down the street past Albany Middle School yesterday, and it was dismissal time, and I could just see one driver getting really upset and just deciding to go because it's just a constant stream of students not even looking. And I got to the next intersection, and there's Principal Mapes out there, and he's managing the situation. Impressive to see, however, just quick, brief interaction, and I was like, we really, he very much feels this need to look at what we're doing there and with the kids in the annex. We've had this conversation many, many times, but I just felt like, for me, that safety is so much a top priority. And I think maybe we just need to go back to working with the city more, that we close that street during that hour, and that's just keep cars go the other way, go around. It could be that easy. But it just really, I could just see so many things in it, and that just sat at the top of my mind. There's lots of other wonderful things going on at our middle school, and I will update on those at our next meeting. But for right now, I just wanted to say that was my reflection of being around there, and I just want to help keep our kiddos safe.
A couple things. I will, rattle the cages to get more applicants for the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. March 19th, that's our date, right? March 19th is going to be great, so I want more people to apply. This is important stuff. In all seriousness, we raised over $63 million in the bond this past fall, and there's a lot of things for us to take care of in the district, and I want to hear voices. I want to say a big thank you to Marin. I attended another Marin morning, and they, just after Kindness Week, so I got to hear the Kindness song, which I will spare you not singing myself, but it definitely brings a joy to one's face as you watch those kids doing that. And a reminder that spring conferences also start in early March 6th through 14th, actually. And then one last shout out to the Albany Children's Center. I wanted to thank Director Reed. He's always welcoming. I was there. It's a really unique site. And I always keep in mind that while some in the district are on break, they continue to soldier on and really support those kids, which is not to be overlooked. I wanted to make another couple comments that are a little different. I just want to kind of encourage everyone to start from a place of assuming good intent and allowing people grace, especially as I view all of us, whether we're parents, administrators, teachers, or even the broader community. We're all really here for the same reason in terms of creating a supportive, safe, and collaborative environment for the education and growth of all of our kids. I was last Wednesday after I went to Marin Morning, I stopped in at the Principal Coffee, as I do, and I listened to the comments and questions from the community. And I was really struck that in this time of uncertainty, stress, and turmoil, that we're lucky to have a community that really does take care of one another. I'm not going to use names or call out specific parents, but I did hear one woman talk about how she purposely takes her family to as many of the affinity group activities as she possibly can. She was attending the New Year celebration this past weekend, and she had plans already to attend the celebration of the Black History Month, later this week. And she did that just to expose her kids to the traditions and customs of others. Another parent generously shared her experience. She works for a government agency, so I'll keep it super quiet. But really to let the community know that there are allies locally to support our community, regardless of what's being said in Washington. So I really want to call that, now more than ever, we really need this community to continue to come together, whether they're educators, administrators, parents, caregivers, respect one another, help one another, and do what we can to do what's right for our kids.
That was beautifully said. And if I were Trustee Khan, I would say, that's going to be a really hard act to follow, but I'm not going to say.
That's a standard I will never attain.
But thank you. And I really appreciate Superintendent Stone's messaging going out to the community around some of the things that Vice President Mahoney has just alluded to, and just, we're a safe haven school district and just providing resources for families. That's been really appreciated. I attended the Cornell School PTA meeting last week, which was great. I am looking forward to learning more about the Cornell community. Lots of events planned. They just had a winter craft fair. Cornell's Got Talent coming up on the 29th of March at the Ocean View Multipurpose Room, and then there's a math night and a kids market to be determined, the dates. Their next meeting is May 1st. And also the Board Policy Committee, as Trustee Inglis just mentioned, we met, and the next meeting is going to be on the 4th of March. And as she said, the more sort of perhaps topics that need more discussion will come to the board. We'll actually have those conversations here rather than in committee, but anybody who wants to come is welcome. We've been having them on the Tuesdays that are not board meetings at the district office between 5 and 7 p.m. and everyone's welcome to that. And I know I had something else. Now it's completely slipped my mind. Oh no, it wasn't. It was last night. As a board, we attended a board retreat along with cabinet and our superintendent, and it was a very interesting few hours. And one of the things that we talked about was actually perhaps looking at our agenda and just thinking of ways of making our meetings more effective and more efficient. And so I'm looking forward to digging into that a little bit. So yeah, watch this space. And then we are now moving on.
Can I just highlight one thing that I was remiss? I just really want to highlight that on Thursday, we will be having our Black History Month celebration at Albany High in the Little Theater from 6 to 8. I know that Vice President Mahoney alluded to it, but I just wanted to put it out there as I hope to see people there.
Great, thank you. And now we are Moving on to item 14, which is matters introduced for the future agenda items, basically. So does anybody here on the board have any future agenda items?
I would like to ask to get a report on Prop 28 and the spending that we've done in the past year and some of the plans, understanding the plans for the future since we're going into the budget and planning period. Thank you.
Anyone else? And I would like to just make a plan at least to talk about our sort of vision for technology in the district now that we've approved that spend on the new Chromebooks.
I think also, as we're thinking forward, carrying out from last night, I would just like us to think about, I think what would be really helpful for the board is to have a session where we can just have a conversation around sort of our handbook and the goals and with, I should say, the governance team do that. And I thought in reflection on last night a lot, what's challenging is when so many things have happened and people don't know how they've happened and how we got to where we are. It's challenging to then say, okay, now let's move forward. And then, we really need to sit in a space and have the chance for everybody to kind of look at it, talk about it, and move that forward. And so I would just ask that for our next one, we have a looser agenda for it and just more of a time for the board to kind of have the document and work on it.
Sounds good. Anybody else?
Well, on that note, revisiting our mission and vision as well as working on our strategic plan as well.
I guess I think we should clear it up too. We don't work on the strategic plan. We need to set the board priorities, and then we need to get those to you so that we can have a better, an updated strategic plan. Okay.
Great. And if that is everything, we good? We good? Okay. Anyone else? Perfect. Okay, we're adjourning the meeting at 9:35. Thank you so much, everyone.